The wheelchair squeaked with each rotation of its worn wheels, a metronome, marking time in my personal nightmare. I let my head loll to the side, drool pooling at the corner of my mouth as I stared blankly at the morning news. Rachel bustled around the kitchen behind me, humming something cheerful while she made coffee for two. 2 cups. Always 2 cups now. "Morning, honey," she cooed, planting a kiss on my forehead that made my skin crawl. "Sean's coming over to help with your physical therapy today." I grunted softly, the sound of a broken man who couldn't form words. Inside, I was screaming. Sean McClellan, my former best friend, my wife's lover, and one of the 2 people who tried to homicide me 2 years ago on that cliff road outside Millbrook. The brake lines had been cut clean through. Professional job. Sean owned a garage before he started selling used cars, so he knew exactly where to slice. I remembered the moment my foot hit the brake pedal and felt nothing but air. The guardrail rushing toward me. Rachel's silver Honda parked at the overlook. 2 silhouettes watching my Chevy tumble 200 feet into the ravine. I should have died. The paramedics said it was a miracle I survived. Rachel called it a tragedy when she thought no one was listening. "Elliot, you need to use the bathroom before Sean gets here." Rachel's voice carried that sing-song tone she used with children and invalids. I shook my head slightly, maintaining the vacant stare I'd perfected over 24 months of playing dead inside my own body. The iPhone tucked into my wheelchair cushion was recording every word, just like it had been for the past year. 437 hours of evidence so far. The front door opened without a knock. Sean's heavy footsteps echoed through our small ranch house, the same house Rachel and I had bought when we were happy. When we were planning kids and vacations and growing old together. Now it was a stage for the longest con in history. "How's our boy today?" Sean's voice boomed with false cheer. He was a big man, 6'3" with mechanic's hands and a beer gut that strained his polo shirts. He'd been my best man at our wedding. I'd been his daughter's godfather. "Same as always," Rachel sighed dramatically. "The doctors say there's no improvement. His cognitive function is completely gone." Sean moved into my field of vision, crouching down to look into my eyes. I kept them unfocused, staring through him like he was made of glass. He waved his hand in front of my face. "Nothing there," he said with satisfaction. "Poor bastard." If he only knew that this poor bastard had recorded him 3 weeks ago, discussing the best way to smother me with a pillow. "Coffee's ready," Rachel called from the kitchen. "Come talk to me while he watches his shows." They moved away, but their voices carried perfectly. I'd learned every acoustic quirk of this house during my imprisonment. The kitchen was an echo chamber for secrets. "Insurance adjuster called yesterday," Rachel said, her voice dropping to what she thought was a whisper. "Final paperwork for the trust fund is ready. 4.2 million plus the house and his pension." "When do we file the divorce papers?" Sean asked. "Dr. Patel wants to do one more evaluation next week. Once he confirms Elliot's condition is permanent, I can claim abandonment. Mental incapacity means I get everything." I heard Sean's coffee mug hit the counter harder than necessary. 2 long years of playing house with a vegetable. When does this end? "Soon, baby. I promise. Just a little longer." What if he never gets better? What if we're stuck like this forever? Rachel's laugh was cold as winter wind. "He's not getting better, Sean. Look at him. That's not a man anymore. That's a houseplant that breathes. And if he becomes too much trouble, wait, we talked about this. No more accidents, too suspicious. I'm not talking about an accident. I'm talking about complications, pneumonia, bed sores that get infected. These things happen to people in his condition." My blood turned to ice water, but I kept my expression slack. The phone in my cushion captured every word. Sean walked back into the living room, studying me like I was a problem to be solved. "You know what I think about sometimes? That night on the cliff, the look in his eyes when he realized what was happening, right before the car went over." "Don't!" Rachel hissed from the kitchen doorway. "Don't ever talk about that." "Why not? He can't hear us. Can you, buddy?" Sean reached out and slapped my cheek lightly. "Nobody home upstairs." The slap stung, but I'd felt worse, much worse. The 3 weeks in the coma had been a vacation compared to this psychological torture, but every slap, every cruel comment, every casual discussion of my homicide was another nail in their coffin. "I need to run to the store," Rachel announced, grabbing her purse. "Watch him for an hour?" "Sure thing. We'll have some quality time together, won't we, Elliot?" The front door slammed shut. Sean waited until he heard Rachel's car pull out of the driveway, then walked over and turned off the television. The sudden silence was deafening. "Just you and me now, pal." Sean pulled up a chair directly in front of my wheelchair. "You want to know something funny? I never liked you. Even in high school, you thought you were better than everyone else. Star quarterback, honor roll, got the pretty girl. Well, look at you now." He leaned forward, his face inches from mine. His breath smelled like coffee and cigarettes. "Rachel's mine now. Has been for 3 years, actually. Started way before your little accident. She came to me crying about how boring you were, how you never paid attention to her anymore. All you cared about was your job at the fire department and your stupid weekend projects. 3 years. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined. I thought it started after my accident, but they'd been planning this since before I got injured on that warehouse fire, before I had to take the desk job with the insurance company. She's incredible in bed, by the way. Does things for me she never did for you. Remember how she used to complain about headaches? Funny how those went away when she met a real man." Sean stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street like he owned the whole neighborhood. "The best part is, this was all her idea. I wanted to just divorce you clean, but Rachel said, why settle for half when we could have everything? Smart woman. Cold as a witch's tit, but smart." He turned back to me with a grin that made my skin crawl. "You know what's really going to bake your brain? After we get the money and get rid of you, we're moving to Florida, buying a boat, maybe starting a family. Rachel wants kids, just not with a loser like you." The phone in my cushion captured every word, every confession, every detail that would bury them both. Sean walked over and patted my shoulder like we were old friends. "Don't worry, buddy. It'll all be over soon. Rachel's getting impatient, and honestly, so am I. Playing nursemaid to a brain-dead firefighter wasn't exactly my life plan." I heard Rachel's car in the driveway. Sean quickly turned the television back on and moved to the kitchen, whistling like he didn't have a care in the world. "How was he?" Rachel asked as she came through the door with grocery bags. "Same as always, quiet as a grave." They both laughed at that. Soon, I thought. Very soon we'd see who was laughing. Rajesh Patel had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the sort of man who'd gone into neurology to help people, not to get rich. He'd been treating me since I woke up from the coma, and I could tell he was starting to suspect something wasn't right. "Good morning, Elliot," he said softly, setting his medical bag on the kitchen table. Rachel hovered nearby, playing the concerned wife perfectly. "How are we feeling today?" I gave him my standard vacant stare, but when Rachel turned away to pour him coffee, I let my eyes focus on his face for just a moment, just long enough for him to notice. Dr. Patel had been running unofficial tests for months, simple things that Rachel wouldn't notice, asking me to follow his finger with my eyes when she wasn't looking, dropping his pen and watching to see if I tracked the movement. Yesterday, he'd asked me to squeeze his hand if I could hear him, and I'd given him the faintest pressure. "Mrs. Masters, would you mind if I examined your husband privately today? I'd like to try some new cognitive exercises without distractions." Rachel's smile faltered for just a second. "Of course. I'll be in the bedroom folding laundry if you need anything." Once she was gone, Dr. Patel moved his chair closer to my wheelchair and spoke in a whisper. "Elliot, I know you can hear me. I've been watching you for months, and your responses don't match your supposed condition. If you can understand me, squeeze my hand." I squeezed. His intake of breath was sharp. "My God, how long have you been aware?" I held up 2 fingers. 2 years? Since you woke up?" Another squeeze. "Why haven't you told anyone?" I couldn't exactly explain the whole situation through hand squeezes, so I did something risky. I pulled out my phone and showed him the recording app, then put my finger to my lips. Dr. Patel's eyes went wide as he understood. He nodded slowly, then spoke in a normal voice for Rachel's benefit. "Let's try some basic motor function tests, Elliot." For the next 20 minutes, he conducted a fake examination while I showed him some of my evidence. Photos of financial documents, audio snippets of Rachel and Sean's conversations, bank statements showing the insurance payout. When Rachel returned, Dr. Patel was back to his professional demeanor. "How does he seem to you, doctor?" Rachel asked, her voice dripping with false concern. "Unchanged, I'm afraid, but I'd like to schedule a comprehensive evaluation next week. Bring him to my office for a full battery of tests." "Is that really necessary? He's been like this for 2 years. Standard protocol, Mrs. Masters. The insurance company requires periodic assessments for long-term care claims." Rachel's jaw tightened. She didn't like anything that might interfere with her timeline, but she couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. Of course, whatever's best for Elliot. After Dr. Patel left, Rachel was agitated. She paced around the living room, chewing her thumbnail like she did when she was stressed. Something's wrong, she muttered to herself. Why does he need more tests now? When Sean arrived that evening, she was practically vibrating with anxiety. The doctor wants to do a full evaluation next week. What if he finds something? What if Elliot's getting better? Sean laughed and cracked open a beer. Look at him, Rachel. He's been staring at that same spot on the wall for 20 minutes. He's not getting better. But what if nothing? The man's brain is scrambled eggs. Even if some part of him is still in there, he can't prove anything, can't testify, can't even take care of himself. I filed that away with everything else. Sean's casual cruelty was going to make excellent evidence for the jury. I don't like it, Rachel said. I want this over with. The evaluation, the divorce papers, all of it. I want our life to start. Soon, baby, I promise. Just hold your horses a little longer. Rachel walked over to where I sat and stared down at me with undisguised hatred. When she thought Sean wasn't looking, her mask slipped completely. The loving wife disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. You ruined everything, she whispered. You were supposed to die in that car. Instead, you're stuck here like some kind of ghost, haunting our happiness. A ghost. That's exactly what I was. A ghost gathering evidence from beyond the grave of my former life. Sometimes I think about what our life would be like if you just died like you were supposed to, she continued. Sean and I could have grieved properly, gotten married after a respectful period. Instead, we're trapped in this nightmare with you. She leaned down until her face was inches from mine. But don't worry, honey. It's almost over. One way or another, you won't be a problem much longer. The threat was crystal clear. If the legal route didn't work, they'd find another way to get rid of me. But they'd made one crucial mistake over the past 2 years. They'd gotten comfortable, sloppy. They talked freely around me, planned openly, never thinking that their brain-dead victim might be recording every word. That night, after they thought I was asleep, I heard them in the bedroom next to mine. The walls were thin, and their conversation carried perfectly. I can't take much more of this, Rachel said. Living in this house with him, pretending to care. It's driving me crazy. Just a few more weeks, Sean replied. After the evaluation, we file the papers. 6 months for the divorce to go through, then we're free. 6 months? I can't wait 6 months. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe it's time for Plan B. Make it look natural. Accidental overdose of his pain medication. Happens all the time with people in his condition. Rachel, we talked about this. No more ending. It wouldn't be ending. It would be mercy. Look at him, Sean. What kind of life is that? We'd be doing him a favor. My stomach dropped. They were seriously discussing getting rid of me again, and this time Sean seemed more open to the idea. How would we do it? He asked. Crush up his pills, mix them in his feeding tube, make it look like I made a mistake with the dosage. Grieving widow, overwhelmed by caregiving responsibilities. The insurance money still pays out. What about the doctor? He's been asking a lot of questions. That's exactly why we need to do this now, before he digs any deeper. Once Elliot's gone, there's no one left to examine. They talked for another hour, working out details. How much medication would be needed? How to dispose of the evidence? What Rachel would tell the paramedics when she found my body? I recorded every word. The next morning, Rachel was unusually cheerful. She hummed while making breakfast, kissed my forehead, and told me what a beautiful day it was going to be. She had no idea it was going to be one of her last as a free woman. The courthouse in downtown Millbrook was a grand old building with marble columns and brass fixtures that had seen better days. Judge Patricia Hendricks presided over family court with the no-nonsense authority of someone who'd heard every sob story and seen every scam in 30 years on the bench. Rachel sat in the front row wearing her best black dress, playing the role of devoted wife to perfection. Sean waited in the hallway, ready to testify about my condition and Rachel's need for full guardianship. Dr. Patel sat near the back, his medical bag containing the evidence that would change everything. I was wheeled in by a court-appointed aide, slumped in my chair with my head tilted at an awkward angle. To everyone in that courtroom except Dr. Patel, I looked like exactly what I was supposed to be, a broken man with no awareness of his surroundings. Your Honor, Rachel's lawyer began, Mrs. Masters has been caring for her husband for over 2 years since his tragic accident. His condition has shown no improvement, and she needs legal authority to make decisions about his care and finances. Judge Hendricks looked down at me with genuine sympathy. I see, and what is Mr. Masters' current prognosis? Permanent cognitive impairment, Your Honor. He requires full-time care and has no capacity for decision-making. Has anyone attempted to communicate with Mr. Masters recently? Dr. Patel stood up. Your Honor, I'm Dr. Rajesh Patel, Mr. Masters' neurologist. I'd like to request a brief private consultation with the patient before these proceedings continue. Rachel's lawyer objected immediately. Your Honor, Dr. Patel has examined Mr. Masters dozens of times over the past 2 years. His condition is well documented. Nevertheless, Judge Hendricks said, I'd like to hear from the doctor. Dr. Patel approached the bench. What happened next was theater worthy of Broadway. Dr. Patel and I had rehearsed this moment for weeks, communicating through hand signals and written notes during his house calls. Your Honor, Dr. Patel said quietly, I have reason to believe Mr. Masters may have more cognitive function than previously thought. I'd like to request permission to conduct a brief evaluation here in chambers. Judge Hendricks raised an eyebrow. What kind of evaluation? Simple cognitive tests. If Mr. Masters shows any awareness, he has the right to speak for himself regarding his guardianship. Rachel shot to her feet. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. My husband hasn't spoken a coherent word in 2 years. Dr. Patel is grasping at straws. Mrs. Masters, please sit down, Judge Hendricks said firmly. Patel, proceed with your evaluation. Dr. Patel wheeled me closer to the judge's bench. Mr. Masters, if you can hear me, I'd like you to look at Judge Hendricks. I slowly turned my head and looked directly into the judge's eyes. The courtroom went dead silent. Mr. Masters, if you understand what's happening here today, please nod. I nodded once, clearly and deliberately. Rachel gasped audibly. Her lawyer looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. Your Honor, Dr. Patel continued, I believe Mr. Masters has been aware of his surroundings for some time. With your permission, I'd like to ask him some questions. Judge Hendricks leaned forward in her chair. Mr. Masters, can you speak? I cleared my throat, the first sound I'd made in public in 2 years. When I spoke, my voice was hoarse from disuse, but perfectly clear. Yes, Your Honor, I can speak. The courtroom erupted. Rachel screamed, No! And tried to rush toward me, but the bailiff caught her arm. Sean bolted for the exit, but found 2 more bailiffs blocking his way. Judge Hendricks slammed her gavel repeatedly. Order! Order in this court! When the chaos settled, I was sitting upright in my wheelchair, looking directly at my wife for the first time since the accident. The mask was off. The performance was over. Mr. Masters, Judge Hendricks said carefully, how long have you been aware of your surroundings? Since I woke up from the coma 2 years ago, Your Honor. I've been conscious and alert this entire time. Then why didn't you speak? Why did you let everyone believe you were incapacitated? I reached into my wheelchair cushion and pulled out my phone. Because I wanted to gather evidence, Your Honor. Evidence of the crimes committed against me. Rachel's face had gone white as paper. Elliot, what are you doing? What crimes? You had an accident. I had my brake lines cut, I said calmly. By my wife and my best friend, who wanted to collect my life insurance and live happily ever after. Judge Hendricks looked skeptical. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Masters. Do you have proof? 437 hours of recorded conversations, Your Honor. Financial records, photographs, medical records that were falsified, and testimony from Dr. Patel, who's been helping me document everything for the past 6 months. I handed my phone to the bailiff. This contains audio recordings of my wife and Sean McClellan discussing my homicide, their affair, the insurance fraud, and their plans to end me again if the legal route didn't work fast enough. Judge Hendricks took the phone and plugged it into the courtroom's audio system. I'm going to play a brief sample of this evidence. Rachel's voice filled the courtroom crystal clear. The brake lines had been cut clean through. Professional job. Sean owned a garage before he started selling used cars, so he knew exactly where to slice. Then Sean's voice. I wanted to just divorce you clean, but Rachel said, why settle for half when we could have everything? Smart woman. Cold as a witch's tit, but smart. And finally, Rachel again. Crush up his pills, mix them in his feeding tube, make it look like I made a mistake with the dosage. Grieving widow, overwhelmed by caregiving responsibilities. The judge stopped the playback. The courtroom was silent, except for Rachel's sobbing. "Bailiff, please contact the district attorney's office immediately," Judge Hendricks ordered. "Mrs. Masters and Mr. McClellan are to be taken into custody pending formal charges." As the handcuffs clicked around Rachel's wrists, she looked at me with pure hatred. "You son of a witch!" she hissed. "You lying, manipulative son of a witch!" I smiled at her for the first time in 2 years. "I learned from the best, sweetheart." Sean was screaming as they dragged him away. "He's crazy! He's been brain damaged for 2 years! This is all fake!" But the evidence didn't lie. The recordings were time-stamped and verified. Dr. Patel's medical records showed a clear pattern of deception. The financial documents painted a picture of calculated greed. Judge Hendricks looked down at me with something between admiration and concern. "Mr. Masters, what you've done here today is extraordinary, but I have to ask, was this legal? Recording people without their consent?" "New York is a one-party consent state, Your Honor. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's legal. Since they were talking about me in my presence, I had every right to document their statements. And the medical deception? Pretending to be incapacitated?" Dr. Patel stepped forward. "Your Honor, Mr. Masters was never officially declared incompetent. His medical records show traumatic brain injury with possible cognitive impairment, but no definitive diagnosis of permanent incapacity. He had every right to remain silent about his recovery." Judge Hendricks nodded slowly. "Very well. Mr. Masters, you're free to go. I'm dismissing the guardianship petition and ordering a full investigation into the insurance claims and alleged attempted homicide." As I wheeled myself out of the courthouse, I could hear Rachel screaming my name from the police car. 2 years of playing dead, and now I was finally alive again. But this was just the beginning. The trial would be the real show. 6 months later, the Millbrook County Courthouse was packed for what the local newspaper called the trial of the century. Rachel and Sean sat at separate defense tables. Their lawyers had wisely decided that joint representation would be impossible, given how quickly they'd turned on each other. Rachel looked thin and haggard in her orange jumpsuit. Jail hadn't been kind to her. Sean had put on weight and developed a nervous tic that made his left eye twitch every few seconds. Neither of them would look at me as I took the witness stand. District Attorney Margaret Chen was a small woman with a voice that could cut glass. She'd built her career prosecuting insurance fraud, and this case was her masterpiece. "Mr. Masters," she began, "please tell the jury what happened on the night of October 15th, 2 years ago." I'd told this story 100 times to police, lawyers, and investigators, but it never got easier. I was driving home from my job at Millbrook Insurance around 10 p.m. It had been raining and the roads were slick. I was taking Route 9 along the cliff when I realized my brakes weren't working. "What did you do?" I tried the emergency brake, but that had been disabled too. I could see headlights in my rearview mirror, a silver Honda Civic that had been following me since I left work. As I approached the curve near Miller's Point, I saw another car parked at the overlook. "Could you identify the vehicles?" The Honda belonged to my wife, Rachel. The car at the overlook was Sean McClellan's pickup truck. D.A. Chen walked over to the evidence table and picked up a photograph. "Mr. Masters, I'm showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit A. Do you recognize this?" The photo showed my mangled Chevy at the bottom of the ravine, wrapped around a tree like a metal pretzel. "That's my car after it went over the cliff." "How did you survive that crash?" "Luck and good engineering. The airbag deployed and the tree stopped me from rolling down the full slope, but I was unconscious for 3 weeks. And when you woke up, the doctors told me I'd suffered severe brain trauma. My wife was there, crying, telling me how worried she'd been, but I remembered everything: the failed brakes, seeing their cars, the feeling that this wasn't an accident." DHN nodded. "So you decided to investigate." "I decided to listen. When people think you're brain damaged, they say things around you they'd never say otherwise. I became invisible in my own house." She played several audio clips for the jury. Rachel and Sean discussing the cut brake lines, the insurance money, their plans for the future. With each recording, I watched the jurors' faces grow more disgusted. "Mr. Masters, why didn't you contact police immediately when you realized what had happened?" "Because I knew it would be their word against mine. A brain-injured man accusing his loving wife and his best friend of attempted homicide? I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof." "And did you get that proof?" 437 hours of it. Rachel's lawyer, a sleazy ambulance chaser named Phillips, tried his best during cross-examination. Masters, isn't it true that you'd been having marital problems before your accident? We'd been having some difficulties, yes. Financial stress, problems with closeness, perhaps your wife was looking elsewhere for companionship. I smiled at him. Are you asking if I deserved to be ended because my marriage wasn't perfect? Objection, Dei-Chen called out. Sustained, Judge Martinez ruled. Rephrase your question, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Masters, how do we know these recordings are authentic? How do we know you didn't fabricate them during your supposed recovery? I'd been waiting for this question. Because every recording is time-stamped and geotagged by the phone's GPS. They were automatically uploaded to cloud storage in real time. The phone company has verified the metadata. Unless you think I invented time travel, there's no way to fake that evidence. Phillips tried a few more angles, but the evidence was overwhelming. Phone records showed Rachel and Sean had been in contact for months before my accident. Financial records revealed they'd already spent some of the insurance money. Most damning of all, a forensic examination of my car had found clean cuts in the brake lines. Exactly the kind Sean would know how to make. When Sean took the stand in his own defense, he tried to pin everything on Rachel. She came to me crying, he said, his eye twitching frantically. Said Elliot was controlling, that she was afraid for her life. She begged me to help her get away from him. So you decided to homicide her husband? Dei-Chen asked dryly. No. I mean, yes, but it wasn't supposed to be homicide. She said we'd just scare him, make him think his brakes were going out so he'd drive more carefully. I didn't know she wanted him to actually crash. It was pathetic. Even his own lawyer looked embarrassed. Rachel's testimony was even worse. She'd decided to go with temporary insanity. I wasn't thinking clearly, she sobbed into a tissue. Elliot had become so distant after his injury at work. He was drinking, staying out late, ignoring me completely. I felt so alone. So you decided to have him ended? Dei-Chen pressed. I wasn't thinking. Sean kept saying how much better my life would be without Elliot dragging me down. He made it sound so reasonable, so logical. I was having a breakdown. Mrs. Masters, you collected $4.2 million in insurance money. You bought a new car, expensive jewelry, and put a down payment on a house in Florida. Does that sound like someone having a breakdown? Rachel's composure cracked completely. He deserved it. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who treats you like furniture, who comes home from work and barely acknowledges you exist? I gave him the best years of my life, and he threw them away. So you decided to throw his life away? I decided to take what was mine. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Attempted homicide, conspiracy, insurance fraud, elder misuse. Rachel got 25 years to life. Sean got 30 years to life as the mastermind behind the brake tampering. As the verdicts were read, Rachel finally looked at me. Her eyes were filled with a hatred so pure, it was almost beautiful. I should have used a pillow that first week, she mouthed silently. I mouthed back, you should have checked if I was really sleeping. The aftermath of the trial was a media circus that lasted for months. The ghost husband became a national story. I did interviews with 60 Minutes, Dateline, and every major news outlet. Hollywood producers called about movie rights. Publishers offered book deals. I turned them all down. Some stories aren't meant to be entertainment. Some pain isn't meant to be profitable. Instead, I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I donated the entire insurance payout, all $4.2 million, to the Traumatic Brain Injury Foundation. Real victims of real accidents who needed real help, not the fake victim I'd pretended to be. The house felt different without Rachel's presence. Cleaner somehow, like an infection had been removed. I kept the wheelchair for a while. It had become oddly comforting during those long months of performance. But eventually I donated that too. Dr. Patel became a good friend. He'd risked his medical license to help me, and I'd never forget that. We had dinner once a month, and he never asked me if I regretted what I'd done. He understood that some questions don't need answers. The hardest part was rebuilding my life. 2 years of playing dead had left me genuinely isolated. Most of my friends from the fire department had moved on, started families, forgotten about the guy who disappeared into his own tragedy. I had to learn how to be alive again. I sold the house and moved to a small apartment downtown. Got a job with a different insurance company, one that specialized in investigating fraud. Turns out I had a talent for spotting lies. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from Rachel. The return address was Albion Correctional Facility. Elliot, it read, I know you'll never forgive me, and I'm not asking you to, but I need you to know that I loved you once. Before Sean, before the money, before everything went wrong. There was a time when we were happy, and that wasn't fake. I hope you remember that sometimes. I hope it doesn't hurt too much, Rachel. I read the letter 3 times, then burned it in the kitchen sink. Some memories are too dangerous to keep. A year later, I met Sarah at a coffee shop near my office. She was a nurse at the local hospital, recently divorced, with kind eyes and laugh lines that made her beautiful. We talked for 2 hours about books and movies and everything except my past. On our 3rd date, I told her the whole story. I expected her to run, to decide that getting involved with someone who'd lived through that kind of betrayal was too complicated. Instead, she reached across the table and took my hand. That must have been the loneliest 2 years of your life, she said. It was the first time anyone had focused on my pain instead of my cleverness. The first time someone had seen the cost of my revenge instead of just admiring the result. We've been together for 6 months now. She knows I have nightmares sometimes, dreams where I'm back in that wheelchair, trapped and voiceless, while people plan my death around me. She knows I check the locks on our doors twice before bed and that I'll never own another car with power brakes. But she also knows that I'm learning to trust again. Learning to believe that not everyone who says they love you is planning to destroy you. Last week I received another letter. This one was from Sean, written from Attica State Prison. I threw it away without opening it. Some voices don't deserve to be heard. The strangest part of this whole experience is how it changed my relationship with truth. For 2 years, I lived the biggest lie of my life in order to expose an even bigger one. I became a fraud to catch fraudsters. I played dead to stay alive. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just told the truth from the beginning. If I'd woken up from that coma and immediately accused Rachel and Sean of attempted homicide. Would anyone have believed me? Would there have been enough evidence to convict them? I'll never know. But I sleep better at night knowing they're in prison, knowing that other people are safe from their particular brand of evil. The fire department offered me my old job back after the trial. Full pension, back pay, heroes welcome. I turned them down. I'd learned that some fires are better left to burn out on their own. Instead, I work insurance fraud cases now. I'm good at it, better than I ever was at fighting fires. I understand the mindset of people who think they can cheat the system, who believe they're smarter than everyone else. I've been there. I've lived in that world of lies and performance and calculated deception. The difference is, I did it to survive. They do it to steal. Today marks exactly 3 years since the accident. 3 years since Rachel and Sean tried to homicide me for money. I'm sitting in my apartment, looking out at the city lights, thinking about how different my life is now. I'm alone, but not lonely. Careful, but not paranoid. Alive in ways I never was when I was pretending to be dead. Tomorrow, I start a new case. A woman who claims her husband died in a hunting accident, but the trajectory doesn't match her story. The insurance company suspects she did it herself and staged the scene. I'll find the truth. I always do now. It's become my specialty, my calling, my penance for the 2 years I spent living a lie. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold. They're wrong. Revenge is a dish that never stops being served. Every day Rachel and Sean wake up in prison is another day of justice. Every fraud case I solve is another small victory for truth over deception. I don't forgive them. I don't forgive myself for what I became in order to stop them. But I've learned to live with both truths, that sometimes good people do terrible things, and sometimes terrible things lead to justice. The wheelchair's gone. The recordings are evidence in a closed case. The insurance money is helping people who really need it. But the ghost in the mirror, the man who learned to be invisible in his own life, he's still here. Still watching, still listening, still ready to catch the next liar who thinks they're smarter than the truth. And that's exactly where he belongs.